Hello everybody from Plant Reviews, today the 31st of October, and I'm talking today about my favorite orchids, the Cattleyas, of which I have 3 in bloom today and one with a developing seed pod, so I'll definitely make a general video about how I cultivate these plants. The Cattleya is a genus of orchids with several species and thousands of hybrids that was dedicated by Lindley, the botanist Lindley, to William Cattley in 1824 when he described a plant collected in Brazil that was brought from Brazil to England, and William Cattley, an horticulturist, was able to bloom this plant. This plant was called Cattleya in honor of William Cattley, and labiata in reference to the labium, the lip of the flower, that was such evidently a stunning lip in when Lindley looked at the flower. And actually in most species of Cattleya the lip is very different from the rest of the flower. I show you here, this is one Cattleya species, Cattleya maxima, and you can see that while petals and sepals, unfortunately these flowers are already fading, these other 2 flowers are actually still pretty well fresh. And you can see in Cattleya maxima how the lip is different from the rest of the petals and sepals. In Cattleya maxima in particular is much darker than the rest of the petals, at least in the most common form, and it has a really nice yellow stripe. However, different species of Cattleyas, even from different areas, can interbreed absolutely easily in captivity and actually in the wild as well. For example, has been known in the wild the Cattleya called Cattleya hardiana, that first was supposed to be a species, but actually was found out that it is actually a cross, a natural cross, a hybrid occurring in nature between Cattleya warscewiczii and Cattleya dowiana, because the blooming of these orchids overlaps for a little period, so some insects can actually cross-pollinate these 2 different species. Cattleyas, in addition to hybridize with other Cattleyas, hybridize with other members of other genuses, for example Brassavola and Rincolelia. This has been used to widen the variety of color and shape and fragrances that Cattleya hybrids are show in culture. For example, we have this beautiful orchid, the Lake Murray Mendenhall, and this is a hybrid where also Rincolelia digbiana is in the parentage. Rincolelia digbiana is a species that gives a very peculiar frilliness to the lip. You can see that the lip in this species is very frilly, even if many Cattleya has a frilly lip. However, the Rincolelia digbiana is the frilliest of probably all orchids in the Cattleya alliance. Another hybrid here I have is the Rincattlenante ex Potinara Burana Beauty, with its beautiful yellow flowers striped with red. Most Cattleyas usually are pink and purple. However, alba forms, so white as well as semi-alba with flower mainly white and a color lip, are also known and actually are now quite common in cultivation. Cattleyas in general are orchids that are pretty easy to keep as long as they have lots of light. The light requirements vary among species. For example, I found that my Cattleya maxima doesn't really like too much direct sun. Indeed, I usually have it in this window, that is an northeast facing windows, and with that it blooms every year, while other Cattleyas, for example the Lake Mura Mendenhall and other species like the Varshavicii that I made a video in July with its beautiful bloom, really like intense sunlight. As long as they are acclimated slowly, I put them in a south facing windowsill in winter, and they have been all the way through summer without any problem, because obviously leaves slowly adapted to the full sun. Bear in mind, anyway, we live in England, so obviously the sunlight the orchids receive in England in July and August is very different from the orchids, from the light that they can receive in California or Australia or Italy or South Africa, or say in mainly tropical and subtropical countries. The Cattleya genus is a genus of sympodial orchid, so they basically grow sideways, not basically upwards like Phalaenopsis. So from a main rhizome they develop leaves with a quite fleshy base called pseudobulb, that is an energy storage for the plant. In ideal condition, they can bloom for every pseudobulb and leaf growing. So basically, this, for example, is a new growth, a new pseudobulb. This is this year pseudobulb. So you can see that the plant produces first this fleshy base, this pseudobulb that is usually quite elongated in Cattleyas. One leaf, Cattleyas can have either one or two leaves on the top of the pseudobulb, according to the different species, and obviously hybrids can have one or two leaves as well, according to the parentage of the ancestors. And then from the leaf, in some Cattleyas it produced a leaf-like structure that is like a sheath, in which the flower buds start developing. Then the flower stem pierces the sheath, or for example you can just cut lightly just before the flower bud start piercing the sheath, just in case, because some sheath tends to dry up. So if the flower bud is not able to pierce the dried sheath, it can actually get damaged. The flower will be a little bit deformed. There is a nice video from Garrett and Duenza explaining this, so I decided in this bloom in particular to cut the sheath. And then the flower will open in all its beauty. Cattleyas, as most orchids, have a typical orchid shape. I would say the Cattleya is probably the most typical orchid when you think about orchid. So it has 3 sepals and 3 petals, of which one is modified as a landing structure for insects. The petals in many Cattleyas are usually wider than the sepals, and the lip is the widest, and as I said, is usually bigger and different in color from the other petals and sepals. In addition to the beautiful colors, as I said, most species come in shades of purple and pink. White is also known. However, some other species have beautiful red and yellow. Usually red and yellow species are not fragrant, while pink, white, lavender, like bluish purple, and bright purple are fragrant. This is a general rule, but obviously there are exceptions to the rule as well. And for example, a nice exception is this hybrid, the wrinkled trenante Burana Beauty, that it is yellow and red, because as red and yellow ancestors, that were, even if the species red and yellow in these ancestors are not fragrant, has been hybridized with other species of the Cattleya alliance, and the result is a beautiful yellow and red flower that is also fragrant. This one smells of citrus It is quite powerful, I would say. I had only one bloom this year, but I've been told that this plant can really make the whole room, your whole room, smell of citrus or of roses. Some people, the fragrance smells like a rose. To me, this one smells like more like a citrus. The plants are can be cultivated in different conditions, as many orchids. Most of the orchids, when they are born and cultivated, they are cultivated in sphagnum, like this Cattleya violacea that I bought a couple of weeks ago and arrived just a couple of days ago. I made a video. I found that sphagnum moss is a great medium to keep the roots moist. However, it tends to sometimes to keep them too moist. So really, my conditions in England is not my favorite substrate, because after a while the roots tend to rot, and the sphagnum moss tend to compact too much as well, almost suffocating the roots. So I will try to repot this orchid as soon as possible. Most orchids that are for sale, most Cattleya orchids that are for sale, they come up in bark, and I found that bark is actually, for me, the best medium for orchids, because it really gives a really nice aeration, and it keeps enough moisture, but enough aeration, doesn't become too compact. I usually water the Cattleyas once every week. Basically, I put the pot in the saucer. Well, this is a plastic saucer, is a cheese, is a basically container for cheese that washed and reused as a pot. So I fill the saucer, the saucer, not as a pot, it's reused as a saucer, up almost to the surface of the plant, being careful not to touch the crown. Leave the orchid in like 10 minutes soaking, and then discard the whole water. You can see this plant is already putting new growth. This is a young Cattleya rex, another species that I bought from. This one is from Orchid Garden, these plants, as I said, usually come either in sphagnum or bark. Bark, however, needs to be changed once every 2 years at the most, because it tends to degrade. So I decided, after watching a few videos on YouTube, including some of Miss Orchid Girl that is about orchids, I think is the most experienced grower, probably the most famous YouTube. I decided to go for semi-hydro. So most of my orchids now are cultivated in leca. That is these expanded clay pellets. And I keep them permanently with about 2 inches of water, topping up when needed. I use reverse osmosis water, and every now and then about once every 2-3 weeks I fertilize with orchid fertilizer, in particular Orchid Focus Bloom or Orchid Focus Grow. I think both of them are good, regardless the status of the blooming or not of the flower. The flowers in Cattleyas are not particularly long-lasting. They last between 2 and 4 weeks, 5 weeks at the most, and they are particularly beautiful in my opinion, because they come in such a variety of color and fragrances that I really can't have enough. Phalaenopsis are also beautiful flowers, beautiful orchids, but very rarely are fragrant, especially the hybrids. When the orchid is in bloom, an option is to, if you want, to pollinate the flowers in order to get some seeds. And this basically is a seed pod of a Cattleya. You will see that this part of the flower, once the flower is pollinated, the flowers will fade away, and this part, the ovary, will start becoming bigger and bigger. You can see here indeed this is a hybrid Cattleya, so you can see here the dried petals and sepals. This is a peculiarity in these orchids. When the flowers that are not pollinated fade away, they just drop. So you won't find basically anything anymore in a Cattleya. For example, this is last year blooming, and you see there's only a dried flower stem here, no dry flowers. But if the flower is pollinated, the ovary continues to grow like in an ovoid shape, and the petals and sepals actually stay on the plant, on the stem, and you can actually still see kind of these flower. This was a purple flower, and you can actually still see now kind of the shape that this flower had when it was when was it full bloom? Last year. This is a beautiful, intensely purple orchid. It's a hybrid. Unfortunately, I don't have any idea of the kind of hybrid because it was not labeled. It's a no ID hybrid. And many of these hybrids, even if without identification, are incredibly beautiful and fragrant. And when the seed pod is mature, you will see that starts splitting. When they start splitting, basically, the seeds tend to get out. The seeds are really tiny. They look like dust, and you can actually see, if I try to focus, that there's some seeds that actually get attached here on the capsule. And basically in nature they are spread by the wind. You can see some seeds, getting out of the seed pod and get spread by the air. What I will do is obviously keep the seed pod in a vial, and I'm not too sure if I will ever be able to plant them. I would love to, but I already so many orchids, and cultivating orchid seedlings is not very easy. Usually you need a lab because they need nutrients and light, and as well they tend to suffer competition against molds. In the past, when laboratory conditions were not in use, what breeders did was actually putting the seeds on the roots of the mother plant that were from the wild, and they had mycorrhizal fungi on the roots that were basically providing nutrients to the young seedlings that were able to develop on the roots of the mother, and then the horticulturists were getting out the plants to grow them on their own. Now, however, they are mass-produced in laboratory conditions. It's very easy to produce Cattleyas. And another option, if you don't have, obviously, a laboratory in your house, you can just get the seed pod and send it to a lab that offer this service for you, and you will get usually flasks of seedling, and then you will need to cultivate them yourself. I will show you now how to do basically a pollination. I will do it just on these faded flowers, but really, when you pollinate a flower, ideally it should be open from about 4 days, 5 days, not longer really than 7 or 8 days, because it's very important that the flower is fully mature and still fresh. So not when the flower is just open, but not when the flower certainly is not fading, is already fading. I'm doing it when the flower is already fading because I really don't want this time to have seeds from this orchid. This is an orchid I pollinated already twice. Once I made an hybrid with the first orchid, I bought a no ID with a beautiful fragrance. And another time I just self-pollinated this orchid, the Cattleyas maxima, and the thing is, every time you pollinate an orchid and it produces seeds, the plant spends a lot of energy in producing the seeds, and this can affect the following year blooming with less flowers or no flowers at all. For example, last year I pollinated an orchid, my #1 orchid, the first Cattleya I bought 4 years ago, and it developed a seed pod. The year before developed as well another seed pod, but this year didn't bloom. So obviously, I think 2 years in a row was a lot of energy for the plant to produce seeds, so this year decided not to bloom. So basically, what you do is to open the flower. It's quite hard with, well, with just one hand, and I think it's better if I cut off these flowers that are fading away, so I can show you. But the plant will, hope the plant will forgive me. So basically, this is the flower. So in the lip, partly covered by the lip, you find a structure. That is the column. This is the place where the pollen and the stigma, so the female and male part of the orchid, are. So basically, what you need to do is, with a toothpick or some scissors, move this part, the end of the column that contains the pollinia. Sorry, I'm trying to focus. Okay, so you move this part. It's quite sticky, but yeah, you can see here now the pollen. So you just take the pollen that in an ideal world should stick to your toothpick or to the scissors, and you move it to this part. Sorry. So the pollen has fallen on my laptop, and I try to take it. Okay, you don't really need the whole part, I mean just the yellow part. Yeah, that's it. So just remove this from the flower. You see the sticky substance? This is the female part of the orchid that you basically need to put the yellow pollen in, and you basically make the pollen stick in this area. So when the pollen is here, after a couple of days, you will see that the flower is actually fading, and the ovary will increase in size. As I said, I decided to do just a mock pollination today and not a real pollination, because I don't have really any space at the moment to get any more orchids in my house, and also orchid seeds usually are viable for about in best conditions 2-3 years, even if obviously it's easier and better to plant them as when they are fresh. So yeah, this is basically the last result. Really, in the real flower you want to be able to see that the pollen is in, because basically in the real flower the column will be here, so it is you have to be very careful in placing the pollen right in this area of the column that is sticky, in order to for the pollen to stick. And then we'll develop the seed pod, and seed pods usually mature between 6 and 8 months. This plant was in bloom last December and now is October, so it took 10 months to get fully ripened. Some laboratories like to have green seed pods before they actually split open. In this way, they are able to disinfect the external part of the seed pod, and then getting the seeds without molding, ever contaminating the seeds inside. Even if the seed pod is not mature, most seeds will be actually mature and they're still able to germinate. And actually, in some orchids, there are secrete some substances that actually inhibit the germination of the seeds for a while after the splitting of the capsule. However, some other labs prefer instead to have seeds that are fully mature, and then the seeds are basically disinfected in a chemical solution, obviously, that kills the molds, but without killing, obviously, the seeds. It is a procedure very complicated. I've never done it myself, so obviously I cannot talk about it. Anyway, there are different laboratories in Europe and in the USA, and I suppose in many other countries, that offer these this service for you, in case you would like to have a go. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, please give a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, please give a thumbs down. Also, any comment on the video would be great, and if you need some more information, let me know in the comments down below, and I will try to respond to you as soon as possible. As usual, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.